Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is E and today I'm going to show you how you can draw this using Procreate. So it's almost Christmas and I thought that we can do something fun together. So I created a template that you can download. It's absolutely free and you can join me as I paint. Let's go. So there are two ways you can download the template. First is to get it on my website. The link is in the description. Personally, I would get the download version because you can get the PNG file with a transparent background and you don't have to trace it over. The other option is just to take a screenshot. I'm gonna flash it here for a few seconds and then you can pause the video and take the screenshot. And once you've done that, you can open up a new canvas and import the image in. Okay, so let's start painting. I'm gonna create a new layer and call it base colors. I'll be painting all the basic colors on this layer. I'm using the hard airbrush to paint her skin, but it looks a little too orangey right now, so I'm gonna adjust it using the curves tool. You can go to adjustments and select curves, and you're gonna see this graph. Basically what you do is just play around with the curve inside the graph and adjust the color until you're happy with it. Once I'm satisfied, I use the color dropper to select the new shade and continue painting the rest of her skin. I'm drawing an outline of a sweater using the studio pen, and then I'll use the drag and drop method to fill in the new color. I'm gonna repeat this for the rest of the illustration, including her jeans, her shoes, and even her hair. By the way, you don't have to choose the same color scheme as me. You can paint her face green and her sweater a red color if you want to. I'm actually really curious to see how other people would paint this, so if you do try using this template, please share it with me. I'm on both Instagram and Threads as Itchy Fingers. Alright, now that I'm done with the figure, I'm going to start painting the rest of the illustration. The steps are pretty much the same. I used the studio pen to draw the outline and drop the color in. The only exception are the leaves. I wanted them to have a more rustic texture, so I colored them in using the 6B pencil. Now that the base colors are all locked in, I'm going to start adding in the shadows and the highlights. I added a layer above the base color layer and called it shadows. This layer is mainly just for the face and hands. For shadow colors, I normally pick a color that is warmer and darker than my base color. I'm using the studio pen to shade where there would be shadows, and that's normally around the bridge of the nose, under the cheekbones and the nose, and around the jawline. I also added the shadows on her hands and fingers and around the area where her sleeves end. This is going to help make the illustration look more three-dimensional. Once I've shaded the areas, I'm going to use the Nikko Rull brush to blend them out. One of the tips that I've learned for blending is that you should always move your brush in the direction of the facial feature. So for example, if you're doing the nose contour, move your brush up and down, and then if you're doing the cheekbones, you should do it diagonally up and down. So this is going to help the strokes look more cohesive. So I'm just going to go over the steps a few times, adding in darker colors in a few selected areas like under her nose. So when it comes to lips, my go-to brush is actually the soft airbrush because it has very feathered edges, and that's gonna make the lips look very soft and natural. While doing her shadows, I realized that her hair is a little bit too poofy, so I'm going to use the liquify tool to adjust it. First, I'll select the layers that I want to adjust. That's going to be my topmost layer that contains the outline and the base colors layer. Then I'll go over to adjustments, select liquify at the bottom. A slider bar is going to show up, and you can use the bar on the most left to adjust the size of the brush you use to liquify. So once the face and hands are blended out, I start working on the clothes. Shading clothes is a little bit tricky, but generally the creased areas are the areas that has the most shadow, so I start with those first. Again, I'm just using the same brush from just now, Nikko Rull, to blend. Now that the shadows are added in, the illustration is starting to come alive, so I'm gonna start working on the presents and the winter berries. I'll be using the 6B pencil to add the shadows here, and that's gonna give them a more rugged look, which I prefer. But if you like to have a glossy look, you can use the airbrush or a brush that has lesser texture. So once the shadows are done, I wanted to start on the highlights, but I realized that I forgot one thing, which is her blush. I was looking at the illustration and I was like, there is something missing here, and I realized she doesn't have any colors on her cheek. So I'm gonna add some blush for her. I'll use the same color as her lips for the center of the cheeks, and then I'm gonna gradually darken the color as it gets closer to the temples. This is going to prevent the blush from looking very flat, and now she looks much healthier, don't you think so? Okay, so now we can go back to adding the highlights. The areas to be highlighted are usually not that far from the shadows, and I'm gonna use a 6B pencil with a slight pinkish tone to identify the areas where light will hit her face. That's going to be her nose bridge, the highest part of her cheekbones, and the curves in her hair. I adjusted the colors accordingly for the respective areas. For example, I used a very light shade of blue for the jeans and a softer green for the leaves. And then I'm gonna blend them out as per normal. Okay, we're almost done, and this part is always my favorite part because I'm just adding some final touches to make her look extra glowy. I'm using the Lightpen to add some sparkles to her eyes and the corner of her cheeks. I added some glitter on her cheekbones and spread it over the rest of the illustration using the glitter pen. just one last sparkle and it's done. So we've come to the end of the tutorial, and if you've enjoyed it, please remember to like and subscribe. And if you do use the template, just tag me on IG so that I can share it to my stories. I hope you have a great December and see you next week. Bye!